Hey everyone, welcome back to Dark Chronicles. Let's dive right into this explainer. You know, words have incredible power. Sometimes they're meant to sound like a warning, and other times like a victory. But every once in a while, a leader uses a word that carries a history so dark and so full of failure, it honestly feels like a bad omen. Recently, Donald Trump started using a very specific phrase to describe the massive U.S. naval buildup currently heading toward the Persian Gulf. He called it a big, beautiful armada. On the surface, that sounds like a massive show of strength, right? A symbol of an unstoppable force. But today, we're going to look at why this might actually be a fatal historical slip, the terrifying Libya model being planned for Iran, and why the ultimate target might be much closer to home than you think. Let's start with that word, armada. For most people today, it just means a huge fleet of ships. But as the historical record shows, the term originally belonged to the Spanish Navy back in the 16th century. And it invokes a history of catastrophic failure, where a superpower's absolute pride directly led to its downfall. Back in 1588, Spain was the world's undisputed superpower. They sent their so-called invincible armada to crush Britain, fully believing they were untouchable. But instead, they were met with a humiliating defeat that didn't just lose them a single battle, it triggered the total decline of the Spanish Empire. So by using this word today, Trump is unintentionally invoking a fatal historical slip. It's an ironic choice of words that suggests the U.S. might be walking into a trap of its own making. Section 1. The Modern Armada and America's Massive Naval Buildup. So what does this modern armada converging on the Indian Ocean actually look like? Well, it's not just a few patrol boats. We are talking about a historic concentration of military hardware. The sources tell us that the USS Abraham Lincoln is already in position. This is a supercarrier that can hold up to 90 aircraft. But that's not all. They are also bringing in the USS George H.W. Bush from the Atlantic. When you see two supercarriers packed with F-35 and F-18 fighter jets, it means one thing. The U.S. is preparing for a sustained air campaign. They aren't planning a quick one-and-done strike. They want to be able to stay in the sky for weeks, bombing targets continuously. And analysts are really zeroing in on this massive expenditure, pointing out that billions of dollars are being spent to push them into complete chaos. What's wild is that this is happening despite the fact that Iran poses no direct threat to U.S. territory. Iranian forces haven't launched attacks on American soil, so this raises some huge questions about the true motive here. If there's no imminent threat to the homeland, why push an entire nation into complete chaos? Which brings us to Section 2, the Libya model, the blueprints for balkanization. According to the sources, this is the geopolitical strategy actually being prepared for Iran. Think back to what happened to Muammar Gaddafi. The U.S. didn't send tens of thousands of ground troops into Libya. They avoided boots on the ground entirely. The blueprint starts by crippling the economy via extreme sanctions. Then they establish absolute naval and air dominance. Finally, they fund internal rebels to collapse the government. You basically wait in the sky while internal groups tear the country apart from within. The sources suggest the ultimate goal of this model for Iran is balkanization, literally breaking the sovereign nation into smaller, chaotic pieces. Analysts point to very specific targeted regions for this division, separating the northern region near Azerbaijan, carving out the western Kurdish areas, detaching the southeastern Sistan and Baluchistan areas, and leaving a weak, isolated central authority in Tehran. It's a classic strategy of divide and conquer, just on a massive scale. Moving to Section 3, the counter strategy. And spoiler alert, Iran is not Libya. Here is the massive problem with the U.S. plan. Libya had a relatively small population. Iran, on the other hand, is a nation of over 90 million people with a highly sophisticated military that has literally been practicing for this exact scenario for decades. The U.S. strategy absolutely relies on a swift, sustained airstrike with zero boots on the ground because they just cannot afford the political fallout of a long war. But the Iranian strategy, it's simply to survive those initial strikes and prolong the war. They want a street fighter scenario. If they can drag this out for weeks or months, they know they can bleed U.S. resources and credibility every single day. Iran knows it cannot match the U.S. in the air, but they have built specific asymmetric assets ready to strike back. The sources highlight fast attack boats designed to relentlessly swarm those giant supercarriers. They also have hypersonic missiles like the Fatah-1 and the Khyber-Shikan, which have reportedly proven they can penetrate 3 entire layers of advanced Israeli and U.S. defense systems. Plus, they have the highly organized IRGC ground forces ready to go. And that leads to a really crucial point. Even if the U.S. achieves total air dominance, overthrowing a deeply entrenched, fanatically organized military force like the IRGC without American ground troops is highly improbable. Proxy rebel groups, no matter how much you fund them, historically struggle to defeat a massive, organized national army on its home turf. They simply won't easily surrender ground control. Let's look at Section 4, the lens of Israel, and the regional domino effect. Now, we have to zoom out and talk about why this matters to the rest of the world. According to the intelligence sources, the US and the EU are reportedly viewing this entire conflict strictly through the lens of Israel. The broader geopolitical goal isn't just about stopping a nuclear program. It's to neutralize any regional powers opposing Israeli interests, create a state of permanent chaos in the Middle East, and effectively denuclearize the entire region to maintain a very specific balance of power. And this is the part that should make us all pay close attention. The analysis strongly suggests that if this balkanization model works, if they successfully break around into smaller, chaotic factions, analysts fear Pakistan is the inevitable next domino. Pakistan is an even more sophisticated nuclear and missile power. If the real goal is regional denuclearization through engineered chaos, a destabilized Iran paves a direct path right to the Pakistani border. The signs that this is moving from talk to action are already here. One of the absolute biggest red flags highlighted in the sources is that Russian experts have started withdrawing from the Bushehr nuclear plant in Iran. In the world of high-level geopolitics and intelligence, when foreign nuclear experts suddenly pack their bags and flee a facility, it strongly suggests that an all-out war is no longer a maybe, it is a when. So, to wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. As this big, beautiful armada moves into position in the Persian Gulf, are we watching a modern superpower brilliantly demonstrate its unstoppable strength? Or, in its attempt to engineer chaos across the Middle East, is it walking directly into a prolonged bleeding trap? Will this grand deployment end in a swift victory? Or will the dark, disastrous history of the original armada repeat itself on the modern stage? Let that sink in.